Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to everyone to Agahi with your host, Warisa Zainab. The word hub or love has been mentioned several times in the Quran. Similarly, the term mawadda has also been mentioned over 7 times in the Holy Quran. We have numerous traditions from the life of the Holy Prophet and his holy household where they have mentioned the significance and influence of love on human behavior. What is this love that we talk about? What is this emotion that is so powerful that it makes people lose control over themselves? What is it that makes people look for something higher, a higher purpose in life as a result of love? Love for Allah, love for the holy household. And then you have the contrary part where people fall in love with the material world, with material things, things that are temporary. And as a result, they end up suffering. Let's understand what this is all about from a psychological and scientific perspective. In today's show, we shall be discussing the neurobiology or the neuroscience of love. And to understand this topic, we have a guest who is quite well known, needs no introduction, but I'll still give a little introduction about her. Her name is Fahima Mohamed. She is a relationship coach for single Muslim. She's a CBT and NLP practitioner, and I'm sure you have seen her before in our program. We'll welcome her again. Fahima, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. Thank you so much for having me, Warisa. Lovely to see you today.
Same here. I'm really excited to have you. And you know how forward we were looking to this specific topic as there's so much related to this. Love is not as simple as it appears to be. And how complicated it is, it's something that you are going to tell our viewers today. And before we start, I just want to let everyone know that this is a live call-in show. So if you have any questions, if you want to share anything, leave a feedback or comment, you can call in our studio number, or you can leave your comments on our Facebook and YouTube page. So let's get into the topic, Fahima. Neuroscience of love. What is love in the first place?
I guess that's the $1,000,000 question, and for everyone it can be defined differently, but we look at it from a scientific and, like you said, a biological point of view. We have to understand that everyone is going to have their own definition and their own feelings. How when we just happiness and success, everyone will give a different way of describing it. However, love is emotions, behaviors, which is characterized by intimacy, passion, and commitment. And that's the real definition that we can sort of take from a sort of, scientific and biological point of view, because it does impact our physiology. At this very moment, I am actually studying my master's in psychology and neuroscience of mental health. So I am going to go into a bit of technical terminology, but I'm sure you are aware of it, and I'll try and explain as much as I can as I move along. But yes, love is basically emotions and behaviors. So we just need to obviously acknowledge that is definitely something that we have to consider, not just in our heart, but in our mind and our body.
So is it something that influences our behavior? Is this feeling that drives a human being towards certain things? Or is it the chemical imbalance in the brain that shapes and molds the person's behavior? Which one?
There are different philosophers and scientists that can actually basically talk about both perspectives, and there are different viewpoints on it. But from a neuroscience point of view, we have neurotransmitters that are used by our brain to communicate with itself. And these are communicated to the other organs and the tissues in the body. So this information is transmitted, which is neuron to neuron, from one area to another of the brain to other parts of the body. So when we are actually feeling in a particular way, chemicals are released in our body, and they transmit information which actually does make certain parts of the body light up or experience certain feelings. And other people say that, well, it's either not just the feeling first, but it's the experience first, or it's someone being told. So it's very many different types of philosophical thinking. There are different chemicals in the body that actually are activated for various reasons. A lot of that is known as adrenaline, which we know is the fight or flight neurotransmitter. We have the noradrenaline, which is for concentration. Then we have the dopamine, which is for pleasure, the serotonin, which is for mood, the GABA for calming, the glutamate, which is for memory, and endorphins for euphoria. There's plenty more. But the reason why I highlight these is because a lot of the chemicals that affect our brain has an impact on our actual feeling, behavior. And then that is obviously taken across with the way in which we behave and our character. And like I said, with love, certain things are definitely lit up through research, as I will go into.
And when we talk about love, it's not just confined to one person. It could be for anything that you feel passionate about. It could be something which could be a hobby, could be a person, it could be an object, could be a place, could be some kind of food. So this feeling is not confined to just human beings or from one human being to another, but it's far more greater, far more deeper as an experience and as an emotion. Why is it considered as like the most powerful source of motivation? I mean, there are so many other emotions that exist.
Yes, it's true. We do have love and we have feeling and passion for our job, our calling, certain things that we're interested in life. But the most powerful one is because we do have a natural need for connection, that it's from another human being. Because we are also conditioned when we are younger, when we are watching even Disney movies, that, life is supposed to be in a way where we are going to be, connected with another human being, and they're going to be our all and everything. And there's a different role for a man and a different role for a woman. And this is how we are played across. And up till today, we're watching the same Disney movies and we're still trying to live those kind of life, happily ever after, and meeting that prince that's going to actually, uplift you and bring you happiness. And these are the stories that if you listen to couples and if you listen to people, whether they're single or divorced or looking for another relationship after a previous one, this is what they want in life. This is happiness. This is success, is to be in a relationship because they feel that that is everything. And yes, it is scientifically proven that to be with another person in a healthy way is actually very good for your well-being. But you need to make sure that you don't put too much pressure on that person or that relationship to give that to you first. And that feeling of love at the beginning is very high, but remember, it wears out after a while as well.
This example that you gave for example, Disney films, and as a child, you're kind of almost conditioned to think in a certain way that love means something that is given to you by someone else, which means you yourself cannot love yourself, you cannot look after yourself, you cannot care for yourself, you cannot appreciate or value yourself. So from a very early age, a child is made to believe that someone has to come in to your life to bring that positive change, that feeling of euphoria or excitement or contentment. And often in this process, or by programming your mind in this way, you often neglect yourself. You often don't believe in self-care. You often don't value yourself in the process. You invalidate your own emotions, your needs, your feelings, your sentiments. And as an adult, there's almost like a dependency on someone else to fulfill all these needs. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I did bring that up as an example because I think, when we watch Disney movies, it's across the globe, regardless of what language, it's all translated. And it is from a very young age, which you are really, like you said, conditioned. And in a way, it does kind of like set out and lay out your future. But at the same time, on top of that, I do feel that a lot of our family homes in our Muslim community, they actually support this as well, because at the same time, we know that marriage is half our deen, but that doesn't mean that we are nothing without it either. And then we are not brought up to be strong individuals. We are brought up to be a half to meet another half. And I think that is the problem. And I think that's why I am doing and talking about certain things in my own platforms, because I want to change that narrative so that people are entering into relationships strong and whole, so that whatever happens, they're not relying, they're not attached, they're not defined. So whether it's there, they're okay. And if it's not there, they're still going to be okay. And that's the difference. And people break and they fall. And when you actually have and you fall out of love, that could be it's just as painful, if not worse, than physical pain. And that has been scientifically proven as well. Heartbreak, rejection, a lot of that. And that can set people back who are highly intellectual and intelligent and professional in such a way that they can lead to, real mental disorders and real mental, illnesses just from heartbreak. And people are not recognizing that either. It's not just, oh, I've forgotten one relationship and let's move on to another. That's not how it works.
I'm just going to take this call. We have a caller with us. I'll just take this. Salamu alaikum.
Hello, can I speak in English? Hindi?
Of course you can. Of course you can.
Please, I don't understand any other language properly anyways.
I'll translate it for you, Fahima. Don't you worry.
Okay.
जी हम क्या पूछना चाहेंगे?
I can speak in English. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, go ahead, please. We can hear you.
Yeah, my name is Suryakant Patel.
Thank you for calling.
Back family problem of my wife, Ita, when we married in 1979, their family, before our marriage, their family now are in very trouble. That is why she was worried about her dad, her brothers quarreling among themselves. Their dad were not keeping her dad properly in other country, and that is why she lost control of the mind. So the government in London told that I can't live with her. I told she is my wife since 1979. And in our culture, God is one, man is one. In our culture, it is told after marriage we have to live in happiness or trouble, whatever happens for each other. But the judge told, no, you can't live with your wife. So since 5 years she is there in the care home. I want to bring her back. Why these people don't understand?
It seems more like it seems more like your question is related to immigration and international law.
Not immigration. Immigration, no, we are already citizens.
I'm really sorry, but this program is just talking about the feelings and emotions associated with love. So if you need any help in regards to immigration, maybe you should try calling local home office maybe, or your Citizens Advice Bureau. Thank you for your call regardless. Thank you.
I do understand to a certain extent what he's saying about the fact that, how is it that you can be alone and in love? Because obviously he wants to still interact and be with a partner that he's not allowed to be with. And that is very true to a certain extent. Like I said, we have a natural human need and connection for other people. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have that need and connection, but when you have complete reliance on that, then that's where the problem is. And if we come from faith, we should understand that our true love is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. And we need to trust the process, because I remember having quite a few conversations with quite a few, people in the past who actually have said, even on my shows, that they've prayed so much for either marriage, and they've had marriage after a long time, but unfortunately that marriage did not turn out very well. So be careful what you pray for and what you don't have, because we don't know what protection it is for us in the future. Definitely. So as much as you want something, we need to trust the process, have tawakkul. And yes, we are all wanting to have the connection with people. But believe me, I know myself as a single person, how much I feel contentment is because I have got passion for my work and helping others, and also my studies, and putting myself and making myself involved in other areas in life, which cannot be completely the same fulfillment. But believe me, it does still fill my cup completely to quite a lot of the top, compared to a lot of people that are even already in relationships. So you need to know where your focus is, and you need to obviously divert your focus not onto the negative, but on other areas of your life. so that can still give you some sort of, euphoria and calming and satisfaction and fulfillment to a certain extent. And it can definitely be done. So I'm living proof of that.
But this is just something I personally don't believe in this when people say that your existence is incomplete unless and until you have someone in your life. And often these phrases like your better half and, you're not half. You're a complete human being created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if that was not the case, we wouldn't have examples of, for example, Hazrat Maryam alayhi salam, who as a single mother confronted the entire society all by herself. And I can't even imagine the strength it must have taken her to face the society back then. Marriage, yes, it's sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it's not obligatory. And we have conditions associated that you can't just get married to anyone, but it has to be someone who is pious, who's God conscious. But how can you be conscious of God's presence in your life if you're not conscious about your own existence? So how is love found or discovered, or shall I say divine love, by exploring or finding your own self? How do you discover your own self in this process and love yourself? Allow love to come into your heart before you can start loving others.
That is a really interesting question. And I think we all need to go on a journey of the self-discovery and the self-awareness. And I think it is a journey. And I think we are at different stages of doing that. And you can't just all of a sudden wake up and just love yourself and think that's it. I think we all have certain points in our lives where it can be where we're confident and we have the self-esteem. And there's other times in our lives where things happen which can put us down and we feel the need for others. However, I think if you are, like you said, God conscious and you're constantly striving towards that way of life, of living for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and making decisions and choices, even whether it's in your relationships, whether it's in your profession, whether it's in your daily activity, if you're doing it because you have a sense of purpose and meaning, and I think that's where we lack. We don't have a sense of purpose and meaning, and we don't have value for what is this life. And when we have that, then it can actually help us understand where is your place in that. And when you have a place or you find a place or you strive towards having a place, and that becomes your calling, whether it's in your profession, whether it's you volunteering, whether it's you being present in your family, whether it's you giving yourself, in many ways, it doesn't have to be on a public space. It could be behind closed doors. That's when you become fulfilled. That's when you are whole. That's when you feel love and you are a magnet to attract love. And that's where it starts. So you need to understand your meaning and purpose, your why. And with us, it's very simple if you are following the guidelines of our faith.
And talking about faith, we have numerous traditions and narrations where Allah tells us to love your brother, just love for your brother what you love for yourself, love your neighbor, for example, love animals, be kind to animals, don't oppress them, love your spouse, love your family members. But with love, there are so many other things that are associated. For example, people who may be able to love others unconditionally, but when it comes to their own existence, they really struggle. They find it really difficult to be kind to their own selves, to love themselves. Why do you think these blockages occur in the first place?
Well, for me personally, I always feel that, I am a gift because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created me, and there's a reason and there's a purpose for me and my existence. And I have to look at it in that way. I think we need to obviously have more conversation about our own existence. And we have to be existential as to, again, what is the meaning and purpose of, our existence. And if you put some sort of place, and value of your existence, then you become somebody. And you want to, amplify that role that you have to play. And even if you don't know, you go on a journey to seek it. I just gave a voluntary sort of time to a local school because they wanted some people to talk about careers. And I was talking to a lot of youngsters in year 9, which are like 13, 14-year-olds, and they're just choosing their GCSEs, and they're like, I'm so stressed out. I don't know what to do. I don't know what subjects to choose because I'm going to regret maybe if I choose this, that, and the other. And I'm like, listen, I have gone through so many stages in my life, and I've chosen one subject to another. I started off with my degree in business management, and then I went on to NLP and, psychology and neuroscience. And I never even did science properly, even in GCSEs, and never thought anything of it. And now I'm doing my master's in it. I said nothing in my life has ever been regret, and it all connects. And, your career, you'll always need something. And it's the same with yourself. We are constantly thinking about what we need to do instead of experiencing what we have and who we are and what we can give. It's not about taking, it's about giving. We need to change our mindset as to how we live. That's what it's about.
So is love merely an imbalance of chemicals in your brain, or is there more to it?
No, there is definitely an imbalance because love is a complex neurobiological phenomenon that relies on trust, belief, pleasure, and rewards. And as the dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin signaling is amplified, there are other parts of the body and other chemicals which is actually deactivated. So your type of judgment that you will have, for example, those are going to be deactivated a little bit. So there are certain areas in the brain which are not activated, which is the amygdala, the frontal cortex, as well as the parietal cortex. So basically, this is the mid-temporal cortex, and that is basically your fear and anger, because when you're in love, you feel safe and you're a bit vulnerable, which is great. But then at the same time, your logic is not there, like for the frontal cortex, for example. And that's why they say in neuroscience proves that love is illogical and it's blind. So as much as it's an amazing way of, feeling, but it does take away a lot of the activity. And another thing is that the attention that you're giving is diverted to somebody's love, which slows your task performance. So that's also shown that when you're in love, you're not going to be performing as much and as good in other areas of your life, especially, for example, in your career. You may not eat properly even because you're flooded with this kind of, feeling of, what you'd say love, but actually it's so many other things that are involved in your chemicals and your body that's actually taken away. So we do need to understand this so that when youngsters, even when parents, maybe not in our cultures, but they're encouraging children, say it's fine to have a boyfriend and girlfriend, it's fine to like someone, but actually you are actually taken away from your cognitive behavior. You're taken away from your tasks, which is actually going to enhance you. And at that age, you should be concentrating on. So love takes you away from you having that full concentration on your normal everyday life and your judgment. That's why when you're in love, it's good to have other people around you to open up your mind and your sight, because you're not going to see, that person the way someone else is going to see them.
And this reminds me of a really interesting research study that I came across. And there were like two groups of people that they took for that research study. One who were like suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder, and then the group that had no mental disorder at all. And they both were in love. And their MRI scans and, CT scans showed certain, enhanced activity in some parts of their brain. And the overall study was like trying to explain that when in love, love induces a kind of state where things are not normal in the brain. And that made me like really think over this saying of Imam Ali alayhi salam, that love is an illness. It doesn't really, it doesn't do any good or nor recompense. And that made me really think that often you see this, that when people are madly, deeply in love with someone or something, it can almost be addictive. And like you said, that it affects your power of reasoning and logic. So how does that happen? Is it the chemicals that are released in the brain that impacts your thinking process, or is there something else to it?
Well, the fMRI scans reveals regions of the brains that are most active when two people are in love, and the research has shown that. And actually, the ERP, which is the sort of event-related potentials, which are measured the changes in the brain activity in response to different stimuli, where the patterns can be linked to cognitive processes, and absolutely correct. But the thing is, at the same time, it doesn't mean that love is bad. It just means that when you are in love, you have to understand there's also, when you talk about attachment and you talk about, the reliance on another, there's also the difference between a crush and infatuation to love, because there's a difference. When you're infatuated with somebody, you can be obsessed and it's unhealthy. But when you're in love with someone, you love, actually, in the Buddhist kind of, theory, they talk about you letting that person go and be free. Whereas a lot of us, we look at love as is their knows, not your parents, not even your children. So that's why, again, it comes back to our faith. If we understand our faith, love is not because it's yours. Love is for you to give someone the space and the freedom. And now we find relationships where it's like a trap. It's like you hold on to them like as if they're yours and they belong to you. They do not belong to you. And people always get me wrong when I talk about this in relationships. And I'm like, it shouldn't really change. Yes, you are more committed, you are responsible, and you are considering the other person. But they don't own you, and they should not take away your freedom, whether it's from a male's perspective or a woman's perspective. And I think that's where we get it wrong. And that's why people may even step out of their relationships to unhealthy behaviors, wealth, infidelity, and things like that, because they feel trapped. And not to say that that is the reason for it, and there's an excuse for it, but that is definitely the reason why a lot of people are having extramarital affairs, because they don't have the freedom when they should have it between two people, to have the freedom to still be, going and being themselves, and even having certain activities that they would do as a single person, if there was trust, if there was, some sort of reliance on the other. But I know a lot of people, they are literally trapped. They're on tracker. They've got their wives on tracker. They've got their husbands on tracker. They have no trust. It's literally holding on to a rope. So if this is the kind of relationship you have, that's not healthy. And that's definitely not a relationship to even be in. And I just think that, humans nowadays are really, really, in a position of, holding each other down, not just by that contract and agreement, but by actually, holding on to that person mentally and physically, which is wrong.
Like you said, it's there's a difference between unconditional love and being possessive to such an extent that you almost mistrust someone and you start controlling their behavior, which then becomes a form of abuse. And when it comes to love, love doesn't leave bruises. Love is not about power and control. Love is not about making someone your captive or slave. Love is a feeling where other person should feel safe and secure in your presence. But we often see this, Fahima, that most people who initially feel that they are in love, after some time they feel they have fallen out of it. They don't have the same intensity in their emotions, and it affects their relationship. And we see so many relationship breakdowns, so many divorces, so many people going separate ways. Why does that happen?
Well, I think in a relationship, it is constant work. And obviously over time, we are habitual beings. So when we get used to something, we want something better and more. Just like when we have a nice car, we want a brand new one, we want to upgrade. And I hate to use, the comparison, but unfortunately it's become like that with relationships. We don't, if you're not going to MOT and service your car and take care of it, and eventually, over time, it does deteriorate even when you take care. So you look at them differently. But as humans, I think we're not working at each other. We're not actually giving each other that time and space to appreciate each other's growth. And we're not actually, looking at each other when you're staying with each other all the time. When you're spending all that time with somebody, you're not really learning about them. You just look at the same lens. And when you look at them with the same lens when you first met them, that, sometimes can turn into resentment. And, we can lose and have a lot of disrespect when you are familiar with people, just like when you live amongst your siblings. right? As much as we are family, we are blood. How much do we fight and argue? So when you are in a couple over years, you can be accustomed to them and you don't look at the brightness with them. But then that takes an individual to work on themselves constantly, to keep someone else on their toes in a healthy manner, to say, look, you know, I am exciting, I am different, I am doing things outside the house, and I'm going to come back and share with you. I'm also going to have a little bit of time apart. I'm also going to have another life, you know, with other people. See, that's where people get afraid that if they're going to have that in a relationship, it's going to take them away. But they don't realize that actually that brings them closer if you both are on the same page and on a growth mindset. Okay, but people are too scared that they're going to lose the other partner, so they keep them so tight. And eventually, that's the same reason why you split apart. So you need to have that kind of freedom and respect. And if someone is God conscious, then you know what, you keeping them tied down or you giving them that rope to move, it shouldn't make a difference, because they should have the values in order to choose for themselves, not you having them on a tracker to make sure that you know where they're going, because they can leave their phones at their friend's house and still go meet somebody else. And I'm saying this because I know this happens for a fact. Okay, so don't think that you know. I deal with so many clients and I see a majority of them in a negative light, but I have to say, I don't speak about this much, but there are still some amazing, you know, men and women out there who are loyal, who are morally correct in the way in which they live, and they do take care of their wives and their husbands, and they have fantastic relationships. So I do believe in love, and I believe in the household, and I believe in family unit, and that's what keeps our Muslim community strong, is the household. So hold on to that unless it's absolutely necessary. I may say that yes, it's okay to be on your own, only because if that's you know, not your choice and you're there, you don't need to be depressed about it. But at the same time, I do value the home. I do value people that are, you know, in love and continue love. And I've got guests that are coming in that's actually going to speak about the platform, that actually they are in love with their wives every single day and they still see them with new lens. It's because they come from a different perspective. So it does exist. Yeah. Absolutely.
So in relationships where people have kind of fallen out of love and they don't feel the same way as they did few years ago, for example, or at the beginning of the relationship, can love be reignited? Like you talked about growth and self-reflection. We know most people don't do that. It's like most people, they kind of, once they get into a relationship, they get really comfortable, in fact, too comfortable, and they almost give up on things, on themselves. Forget about growth. They don't even want to make any effort anymore because they feel, you know what, I've got this person now. I don't need to do anything, you know. And sometimes, often in that process, they end up losing themselves or that person.
Absolutely. I think what you said there was key, was the fact that people give up. If you're not a fighter and if you don't want to work at something, and it takes two people to actually work at a relationship. And even though I get a lot of couples that come to me where only one wants to work, and I know eventually, unfortunately, that relationship is not going to last, because it does take two people. And usually, unfortunately, a lot of people come for assistance professionally when it's at the really detrimental stages. So when you are feeling uncomfortable in your relationship at the very beginning and you're tolerating, that's when you need to seek the help, because you still got the love and the mercy between the two of you. But normally they say counseling and whatever doesn't work is because you've actually reached to the end of your tether and you actually want to break down and you think, okay, let me just give it one last go. That doesn't work in that way. You got to make it work when you're struggling at the beginning. Right? Because when you're struggling at the very beginning, and it's even not so much that you want to tip, but that's when you actually can catch yourself. That's when you can still look at, with love and mercy with your other partner and actually still make the effort to work. You only give up because you think you've tried, because you've dragged it for so long without the actual professional help. And you do need the actual professional help. Yes, it's okay to talk to your family members and friends, but honestly, they're going to give you a biased and judgmental kind of point of view. You need someone who's professional to understand the psychology, to also call you out on what you actually are doing and behaving, and be accountable for your own actions and not just blame the other person. So we need to actually make sure that when we're in a relationship, you've got to check in with each other all the time. You need to have meaningful conversations so that you actually understand each other. Even if you are working, both of you are working and you've got kids and you're busy, it's the quality that you give each other. It's those, the night conversations before bed, the morning, even, the intimacy is so important to have between couples. And it's not just because, just to satisfy each other, but to actually show love and give love in many ways. Yeah. Okay. Emotional intimacy as well is missing and it's lacking. I have so many complaints of people that actually are, in a relationship and they are so lonely. They are absolutely, miserable when they are with somebody. So don't just think because you're in a relationship that it's all okay. You need to be healthy in that relationship for you to be thriving. Otherwise, be single and you can still give the best advice. All right. But at the end of the day, you need to make sure that people that come out of it, they actually have gone through the process far too long. And they obviously, at the same time, they're not fighting. They don't have the energy to fight. They don't see the worth. And people do feel that, the grass is greener. We are living in a world where, people are kind of disposable and you can just pick up another one, unfortunately, very easily. And they're thinking that the grass is greener, but it's not. When you understand your faith, you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put two people together. You need to work at it. But obviously, in extreme circumstances, yes, you do need to come out. But a lot of the time when I hear of these stories, it's just because, they just fed up with each other. And that's no reason to just, use and, leave years of investment. When you've actually had a wholesome marriage and you've just fallen out of love, it can be reignited. It really does, but it takes work and you've got to work with someone who's professional. Absolutely.
So what happens in the brain when someone falls out of love? What about the pain and the grief and the agony associated with heartbreaks? We see people, they indulge in self-harming behavior as a result. They fall into depression. They start getting panic attacks after a relationship breakdown. Some people go as far as thinking about suicide, ending their life. Why does that happen? Why is it that being in love makes you high and not being in love or falling out of love is like the complete opposite? It's like going really, really down. It's too extreme.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a psychology and there's the neuroscience of it as well. But at the same time, I feel that, studying CBT, I realized that your thoughts really does make a difference. And if you are an individual whole in your relationship, you can come out of that relationship as a fighter, still fighting for yourself if you are thinking and believing in a particular way. So even if there's the science and the biology behind it, I feel it's also, as a Muslim, it's my faith that keeps a person strong and keeps a person, fighting for, understanding that, life happens for a reason and challenges happen to help you grow and move. And when you put all your love, if you love your children too much, if you love your parents too much, if you love your husband or your wife too much, anything in extreme in Islam is not even acceptable. So we don't see that. And we put all of us, in this category of, extreme. We put people on a pedestal. We idolize people. I respect and I acknowledge people. I'm not a fan of anyone. So that's how you got to look at life. You got to accept them for, the beauty that they can provide you, the speeches that they can give you, the talent that they have. But when we idolize anyone, especially people in our relationships, that can cause us harm. And when you are in heartbreak, it is like, and when you are in divorce, and people do say it is actually associated with the same pain as grief, and you go through the process of heartbreak and divorce and losing a partner in the same manner as you've lost someone in death. And it's similar process. So you have the anger, you have the, the sort of like, denial, you have the whole process that you can go through, and then the acceptance, and then, this, that, and the other. But in those sort of processes, a lot of the times it can take years. And because it's such a stigma as well, when it comes to our cultures when it comes to divorce, and especially for women, then that's where you get the mental unhealthy, behaviors of, depression, because, people look at themselves as how the society looks at them. But if you yourself forget how society looks at you and you build yourself because you value yourself regardless of your status, then you can actually come out of that situation much faster. And I've helped people do that, where they can say, normally, to get over divorce may take up to like 3 to 5 years. I'm like, no, give me a few months with you and you're sorted. Seriously. Sometimes one phone call is what a client needs with me in order to give them that boost and that uplift. And I've seen this and I've done it. The work that I do on TV is nothing compared to what I do behind the scenes. And that is transforming people's lives out of, turning their pain into power. That's what I do. I turn your pain into power and I transform your life. And, whatever challenges you have, whether it's in your relationships or in your professional life or anything at all, whether it's fear, anxiety, I've helped people overcome suicide, OCD, self-harm. All of these things is what I do. One-to-one with, even teenagers that have got a high percentage of self-harm. I've helped them overcome that. people that have had, relationship issues, whether even if it's sex attraction, whether it's, their relationships, whether it's intimacy, I have dealt with it all. So that's why I'm continuously studying, because at the end of the day, it's not just the psychology, it's not just the science, it's the, it's even your faith. And I do coach people from even outside our faith. So at the same time, what I'm doing is for humans. It's for all of us, really, to be able to move forward in life. And as much as you might want to know the science and the pathways and the circuits and what moves and the chemicals, and having that understanding is really important. But I know what gives me power is my faith, is my, that gives me protection. That gives me the power, and that gives me the understanding as to how to move forward. So, if people from faith, our faith, are understanding, what is their meaning and purpose and their, reason for being in this world, then they will push forward, regardless if they're in a relationship or not, and they will be powerful.
Surely there's more to life than just eating, sleeping, drinking, and procreating. Surely every human being that Allah has created has a purpose. I mean, something as basic as, I was walking the other day and I saw a dung beetle, and I thought, wow, Allah created that dung beetle for a reason. I mean, with so many people with pets and walking their dogs and, stuff on the streets, if this dung beetle didn't exist, our roads would be filthy. So what I'm trying to say is that every human being has a purpose, and going through pain is a very transformational process, and you have to find purpose in pain, like you said. And I've seen that, and I think it's scientifically proven as well, that love can be addictive to such an extent that if for any reason you lose the person that you're in love with, whether it's your child, a spouse, a friend, a colleague, I've seen people literally thinking and believing that now life has no purpose. There's no reason to move on, and life has come to an end. To be in love with another to such an extreme extent can be quite damaging to your own self. And how can we create a balance that you give unconditional love without the thought of reciprocation, but at the same time, you're also in a powerful place where you feel, I can and cannot live without this?
Unfortunately, that answer will depend on the actual human being and what level they live at. We all are humans living on different levels. If you are on the lower level and you're worrying about, materialistic things and surface things and, I want love and I need love and that person has to give me love, then that's how you're going to live. And unfortunately, that thought, that behavior is going to be characterized in that way. If you have a different level of living and you're God conscious, so that whatever happens in your life, you can handle things in a particular way, then that's what it is. So what it is that we need to do in order to be able to live on that higher level is to be a particular person. You do need to study. You do need to have a skill in life where you're going to understand your faith much more, not just from the lectures, not just from even, listening to certain people. You need to study. You need to look and read books yourself. You need to do the research yourself. You need to understand for yourself your existential world, so that when you have that understanding and that meaning, so what comes to you and the same thing to another person. Now, depending on your level, you're going to handle it differently, because your thoughts are going to think in a different manner. Your behaviors are going to continue in that way. And then your entire character is going to change accordingly. Your thoughts are driven by the books you read, the experiences you're around, the people you're around. We hear that a lot, right? And it's so true. Yes. Okay, surround yourself in that way and you will become a different human being so that you can deal with certain things. And I don't like to talk of people in different levels, but unfortunately that it is, because like you said, you're hearing of all of these things where people are losing relationships and they're losing the fact and the will to live. But because that level is only there. At the end of the day, it's like materialistic. If you've lost your house and your car and you think that's it. Yes, it's upsetting. And I'm not saying we should take away that emotion, but just like how when you feel anger and pain, doesn't mean you got to hit someone. You feel the anger and the pain and you breathe. Oxygen needs to go into the brain. And then I have this, breathing techniques, and I even give meditation so that we can actually pump ourselves into such a way that those few seconds before your reaction and your responses, you are in control. And you can actually make the best decisions of your life. I mean, I've studied martial arts and I've done that as well. So at the end of the day, that actually helps with, your discipline. and your breathing and you understanding how to live in life. And that actually also makes you committed. You have to be militant. You have to be punctual. There's so many disciplines in life that we don't have on a daily basis. So obviously we're not going to be able to control it when we have relationships. Let's just wake up and make our bed and even look good and even get dressed up. Even if we're here today on a show, I made the effort. Even if I'm at home streaming, I made the effort because I value me being on the show and me bringing my best self. Now, if you value yourself and other people, you're going to show up differently. And it's the same with your relationships, and it's the same with life. If you're just not going to be bothered because, no one's looking at you, I don't do it because people are looking at me. I'm doing it because I have a connection with my Lord, right? And if you have a connection with your creator, you think differently, you feel differently, and you behave differently. And that is a different level. In fact, it's beyond levels. So you need to get to that. And that takes work. It takes time. It takes effort. But we are also very comfortable. We're very cushy. I'm sorry. Okay, a lot of people come to me. They only need is a kick. Literally, they need a jump start, and I'm there to be that jump start. Because a lot of the times we're complaining because life is very easy, especially where we live in the West, and we get it all easy. And in fact, that that happiness is not there complete and fulfilled, and we don't have the contentment. It's because we've got everything for us. People that are living in maybe, hard-stricken areas, and they have much more happiness because they've got the gratefulness and they've got the contentment that we don't have because we've got too much for us. So sometimes we need to understand, how is our world working? Is it actually serving us, or are we serving it?
And like you said,
environment.
In many relationships, which is very unfortunate these days, that people don't value their partners or their spouses. And for them, to go for a long-term commitment is almost unacceptable because, like I said, they always feel grass is always greener on the other side. So they keep on looking for someone else, and they're never satisfied and content because there's no gratitude for what they already have. And they're always looking for something else. And that will never make them happy or content or at ease. And we only have 2 minutes left. So if you want to give any last message, or you want to say something before we leave?
Yeah, I mean, actually what you said on the last point, the reason why you can't see value in someone else as well is because you also, you're looking from your own perspective and your own eyes. When you have love and you can feel love for yourself, you can give it and you can show it and you can attract it. So a lot of the times when we are hurting others is because we're hurting ourselves. So really we need to have self-care, and that's not selfish. Take care of yourself, learn about yourself, learn about your biology, your psychology, your mind, and your thoughts, and build upon that. Because if you are complete and whole, it doesn't mean because you just love yourself. It's because you understand your humanness, your, from inside and out. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about knowledge. Knowledge is also with wisdom. And it comes with, and it's nothing to do with age, because I've known youngsters more than even elders right now that have a lot of wisdom because they've actually in a different place and mind. So give credit to yourself, love yourself, and you will experience love given back to you, inshallah.
That was a beautiful message, Fahima. Thank you so much. I just hope everybody who's watching this and who will be watching this on social media later on, reflect, do a lot of self-reflection. And like Fahima said, meditation is key, because a lot of times the answers that you're looking for, you often find it within yourself. You just need to self-reflect, need to spend some quality time with yourself. In Quran, the word nafs has been mentioned numerous times, over 100 times. Why? Because Allah wants you to understand your psyche, yourself. Because once you become conscious of your own existence, you will become conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'll just finish this program with this verse of the Holy Quran, where Allah said to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I ask you for nothing as wage except for the love of my kinsfolk, for the love of my dear ones, which are the holy household, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So if you do want to fall in love truly, madly, and deeply, fall in love with your Creator and the ones who were sent down to this world as the proof of the existence of Allah, which is the Ahlul Bayt. Next Saturday, we'll join you again with another amazing guest talking about psychology and mental health. Till then, look after yourselves. Assalamu alaikum.